Kedves testvérek, kedves
Dear brothers and sisters, dear speakers, we are learning a lot of things in these 2 days, most of all patience. Sorry that we always have you waiting at every single point of this conference. Zsuzsa is still trying to get into the Zoom, and as soon as this works out, she will join us, and but we won't wait any longer, but just start with this roundtable. I greet with a lot of love our speakers tonight. We really thank them that they join us for this last a little time for this roundtable too. When I was preparing to this, Richard Rohr book title came into my mind. Everything everything belongs. And really, as we were talking about dignity, everything belongs in life, the creation, family, work. You could say that it is like
varratlan köntös, a néhai
seamless garment that Bishop Bernardin of the US was talking about the seamless garment of the consistent ethic of life that we are not allowed to separate. And I think our times, one of the most dangerous things is that we are tearing apart this seamless garment, things that really are that we just cut out one piece and put it onto our banner, and then we go into war with it, instead of looking at the whole thing. I would start as this discussion by inviting our speakers that after having shared on their own piece of this garment, maybe could you elaborate how you see your own topic in this context of the other topics? And if we look at it in this larger horizon, how could you see in our times the most big challenge concerning this seamless garment? Whoever wants to start, please do so. And then we can maybe give on words one to each other. Maybe I can try to start. I was thinking on, I was listening a little bit to the other speeches too, and I really thank the other speakers. It was a wonderful experience. The society of today, and if I look at the problems of society today, the actual serious problematic, we start to think, is there really some a root problem that may be at the roots of all these problems? And maybe one of them is that we deny reality. Christ says, ego sum veritas et vita. He doesn't say that I am the truth, the justice. It doesn't say I am the justice. He says I am the one who exists. I am what really exists. And in 20th, 21st century, in a lot of ways, we behave in a way, or we even say about real things that they are not real. I don't want to speak about very precise examples, but in politics and economics, and in the borders of these topics, the original sin is that sometimes we leave out reality in our way approaching things. First, the natural reality we leave out. What does nature, what is nature able to support? The way we live, the way we use nature, what will happen in nature? Is it sustainable or not? In politics and economic politics, we act as if we believe that this using the nature would be okay, and it doesn't stick to the objective laws of nature. And there is another topic still. The society too, I think, works in a borderline system, and that is the dignity of man and the dignity of the family and the dignity how we, the laws of biology, of physically and everything else, it would not, we are not allowed to change those. This is happening though. The economic politics right now acts in a way that it denies existing natural laws. If we don't want to be suicidal, then it means that we are just denying laws. We deny the dignity of life, the dignity of man, and the dignity of the family too. Things that would be the state's duty to ensure. And if we are not do this, and Pope Benedict says it in Caritas in Veritate, where until where goes the truth and where starts love. When we only give to people what comes from his dignity and his necessity, what is really necessary for him, this is only justice. Now starts love. Before we start practicing love, we have to respect justice, but we are even hurting the justice. Why? Because we do not respect laws that come from God and the way that He looks at life and at family.
Köszönöm. Esetleg ki szeretne hozzá csatlakozni?
Is there someone who would like to make a response to this?
Folytatni a gondolatmenetet?
Or continue with this line of thought? That was quite inspiring what you just said, János. And looking into my territory, so I wrote a couple of things. So we talk a lot about in many aspects of life that we need to look not from the very bottom at things, but more from a bird's eye view. But of course, you can do that in different levels. This heights, you can look from different niveau. But as much as it's fashionable, that we shouldn't look at it from a horizontal line. But as more we elevate ourselves, or more we look from high above, eventually we might as well look from the eye view of God, and then we get to the point where you are at it. We're looking at the whole aspect of life with the laws of nature and with everything. But see, but if we do elevate ourselves to that heights, then eventually we realize that we already, then we would realize what you just said. So we don't elevate ourselves to that height. We actually somewhat lower, we reduce ourselves lower, because even though we know the truth, we kind of like now on a university, an economic university, and we teaching something completely different. And then we're wondering why our lives are in a completely wrong way. So just because we're not looking from high above, from enough high above down, we don't see this holistic viewpoint, the dignity of life the dignity of man in its all aspects. And at the end, what remains is that little persons could find their solution themselves. And what I mean under issues is really the spiritual issues, the spiritual problems you have, and then like protecting nature is nice, and these things are nice, but at the end of the day there are other aspects as well of life. But so this personal integrity is losing out in a way, in a sense that you're not present in nature, and not present in the view of God, and not present, you can't see the world in its whole. Of course, you can't do that on your own, but that's why we have these conferences, that's why you have communities, that's why you have spiritual life, that we should help each other to see all aspects of life. That's what I see as the biggest problem, that we don't do it that way.
Thank you very much. And before we go further, it is really exciting things we are talking about, but the translators would be happy if very excited thoughts, tell them a little bit slower.
Abban látom sokszor a legnagyobb problémát.
I see the biggest problem in that people lost hope. It's very interesting what the topics Bishop Karak talking about, Sister we're talking about. So the synod about families, African. So all the bishops and archbishops from Africa came, who's so their parishes are very much affected by terrorism, by just everyday life is different, but they're full of optimism in this conference. And then if you look at the Western bishops, and they full of sorrow, because all they see is the problems, all they can see is problems, and they don't see the way out. And this is very characteristic. So when we talk about protecting life or protecting nature, we'll be talking about fight against corruption, we're talking about justice, and now she's muted, and now he's muted. Now he's. He was asking for how long we could. So we've been talking about all these topics, but all these look at like a huge tree, and it's just too big, and I can't cut it down, basically. So all I see is, no, it's impossible, I can't do it, it's not going to work. So we kind of lack this motivation, we lack this prudence that it's going to, we're capable of doing it, and we're looking less at the reason. So we don't really see that one drop in the ocean that it's going to work. But see, without this drop, the ocean would be less, even though I am only one drop. But this internal conviction that this drop is important, that I can step outside of myself, and even if I only add one more drop to the ocean is going to be richer by that single one drop, and it's worth to do that single one step. And this is what I feel it's lacking, and this is what I try to teach people in my parish, that and what I see is that if just a couple of person are reacting to this thought, and we combine our efforts, then we can make miracles, we can make wonders happen. And this is my hope, or this is where I see the problem, that we lost that kind of hope that the single drops contribute.
They told me that Zsuzsa Vizi got in. Do you hear me?
Igen, itt vagy. Isten hozott, Zsuzsa.
Oh, here you are. Welcome, Zsuzsa. We started the panel, the round table, and I asked the speakers to put their own topic into that wider context. How do all these topics connect to one whole without being separated one of the other? That's what we were talking about. And now we are at that thought. How can we talk about these topics with hope? A lot of times there's such broad topics that we could lose hope. What means that drop in the ocean, for example, what Father Joseph was talking about, and I would give a talk. I would go forward. We were talking in the break with the sisters. I was listening to a lot of them saying that every speaker talked in a attitude of hope, and they were all so positive, and that is that much important to us social sisters. So I'd continue this talk with that question, where does that hope come that you are showing us? We see so many problems, and all the topics you were talking about, you were showing us the dangers and the challenges, and still you were talking out of that hope. What nourishes your hope inside of your topic? If I stay in that same line of thought, my students often ask that from me. Two things maybe three I could say about this. To Father Joseph, I could react. I think, and maybe I'm wrong, but as Christians, we have an advantage, and in the Western culture, that maybe is a little bit is fading a little bit. In our task is not to be successful and have effect, but our task is to do what is trusted onto us. Our scope in some way is the road we're advancing on. It doesn't mean that we don't have responsibilities. Our responsibility is that in our own place, we do what we can do and have to do. That is really a big source of hope. If I act as Christ taught me to, if I really try to imitate Christ. my task is to imitate. And he even encourages me that if that imitation works, then my destiny will resemble to his. That is not so easy to pronounce in our Western culture. If we describe our difficulties and what would be a good future, what would we like to achieve, what would have value, then a lot of times we just block because that seems too big and too wide, and we lose hope. Hope should be in what we do what we can, and God puts the rest. Václav Havel, they used to cite Václav Havel, which hope is not hoping, be assured that we will be successful. But I lost that one.
Köszönöm. Esetleg ki szeretné folytatni?
Thank you. Who wants to continue? Maybe I could chip into that one that I say to János. So János was saying basically that it's important for us to do what we ought to do in the situation we are in. So we should do whatever we can as the best way, in a way like Christ would do it. But a very important step in this is, from what I already tried to talk in my presentation, that we should be authentic to ourselves. And this is, and I think that in this search for ourselves, by finding God, that this willingness to search, that needs to come from our very inside. So all our acts needs to come from inside, and all these acts in life, all these steps you make in life, and this is my main point. That's the culprit of life, that it shouldn't be the externalities which kind of drive us forward. It should be an interior thing which we live in the outside, and then we can become authentic to ourselves. And then it's again an authentic life, which might as well, which could be painful, which could be full of happiness, but it will certainly become fruitful. And also, and I experience a great security in this, and a great internal peace in that authenticity. So this is really what I find to be the culprits of how you might live a good life, how you live an authentic life. Can I ask a question in this regard? Of course.
If we are responsible about how much we grow, that is not, that's not just given that growth.
No, it's an interior work. It's an internal work, and I think this is a work with God in person, a personal relationship with God, an interior relationship. I would like to contribute to that. Like the question was, what holds my hope? Three things. The first, whatever I do, I always try not to think primarily about families, how bad it goes for the families. What I try to look at is the person, is the individual. And when I look at the individual, what I see that that person is kind of changing, that I gave some hope to that individual, then I see that, oh yeah, it was all worth it. And the second thing, what we just talked about, it's that the person changes, that transforms. I'm extremely thankful for the Lord that He sent me into difficult situations in which I am really in. That could be the parish, it could be many aspects of life in their difficulties. But I see how much it transforms myself, and it gives me happiness to see that thanks to all these difficulties, I learned something, and I'm extremely happy that I somehow became more sensible, more sensitive. I became more patient. I can pay attention to others more, and that gives me happiness. And the third aspect is good examples. Examples from people who are persons of hope. Like last time when I was thinking about letter to the Philippians from St. Paul, it was surprising how when he writes the letter, he's actually in prison, but it comes through like a very active person. He could be, so he is full of energy, full of prospects, so he could make a lot of good things still. But as a real choleric person, it must have been very difficult for him as well. How much could I have had done, but I can't go on with that because I am now in prison. But in this prison, he's writing now a letter, and this letter is full of emotions. This letter is full of, in this letter he writes how much happy he is that they exist, how much I'm longing for seeing you, and how much joy it gives me, the knowledge of your love, that I know about your love. And when one looks at this not only from a theological aspect, but also reads into the deep emotions, how much he could feel, St. Paul could feel towards others, then it gives me happiness that, yes, really, that is the important bit. When I look at someone else and I have this other person, that's where love manifests itself. So it's not only that the other person grows and has some value out of it, but me as well. And that's where love shows itself. And that is when one realizes that it has value. Because thanks to this, some greater happiness came into existence. And if St. Paul had not had been in prison at the time, and had not had been in the community of Philippi before, but continued to work for another 15, 20 years, he would still be dead for 2,000 years. But we would not know about him. But because of the prison, we know about all his letters. So, see, we don't know what will become a value for the whole of humanity.
Tibor, te honnan meríted a reményedet
Tibor, where does your hope come from for the economic models?
One of my thoughts is that whoever drives a car, it's a great temptation to look into the lights of the car from the opposing direction, but as opposed to looking to who else is on the road, like what the bicycle riders and pedestrians. So I look into it a bit like that. So this temptation is really blinding ourselves. But we only looking at things which are loud, which are noisy, from which a lot is being talked about. Things about we can become pessimistic, or things we can just step on and say, oh no, the world is a bad place, rather than to look a bit aside and see, oh, there's a lot of good things, there are a lot of actions, a lot of humans, a lot of human involvements which are all good, and if we just look at those, if we recognize those things, it's already a good thing. But if we then add our own part to it, it's even better. So at the end of the day, it's not our job to save the world at the place of Jesus. So he already saved the world. It's for me, it's more like a question of conscience, that I need to do these things, but I don't need to save the world. So, like, as Father Joseph just said, I could be in prison, completely closed in, deemed for nothing useful, but at the end of the day, I'm still useful for the whole of community. And even 2,000 years later, how useful those letters are. So St. Paul had to do what he was capable to do at that given time. And with this, he moved on the saving of the world as a co-operator with Jesus. So he actually did everything according to his current situation, and that was enough. So if you look at it from a global perspective, I come from the corporate world, so I look at everything from a corporate aspect. So if someone goes and chooses a consecrated life, now that's a huge business. That's a and if someone becomes married, that's a huge business too. And if it doesn't, that's a huge business too. So everything is a big investment, sort of art as well. So what we really need to do is to just do in every single point in our life what we supposed to do, and that gives this sort of art. Or we can look into the spotlight which blinds us. We look into the mainstream media. We look into and then our life becomes sort of meaningless. And every enterprise has this sort of aspect that there's always a risk associated to it. But that risk is also within our own lives. That if someone is so much afraid of, if someone is terrified of losing out, then you can't enter a business, right? Because that fear is only increasing the rate in which we are doomed to failure. So we could call that an interior peace. I have my talents, I have my possibilities, and this is in what I am right now. And this is what life is all about. That we're not living in the past or future. We live in what we have right now. This is ours. This is the only thing that's ours. Then it's not about hope in its good or bad aspects. You just have to live. In Asia, they say that every 1,000-mile road starts with the first step, and we who received everything for that, this whole system, a system that is 2,000-year old, which has all the directions and directives for that. We have the Sunday Mass. I get the children. I get the so for us, it's much easier than to those who are the lone fighters, whom we can only. Those lone fighters who eventually the important things for them become what others said about them on Facebook, what others are telling them on Facebook. So, for example, when I started my enterprise, then I wrote a leaflet on it that this is a sort of a model enterprise, that because I can't believe that people with disabilities can't find meaningful work. So I thought, okay, I make this. So I try this and see how many we can, where we get to. And eventually we got over 100 disabled persons. Of course, the crisis came and we had to let go people. We nearly broke down. But so I was thinking, was it now a failure? Was it now a misconduct? Or me as a big manager, like I questioned myself. But then I thought, no, actually, I did what I could do at that time. And when it was possible, I made everything. Now that it's no longer possible, I have to accept it. So we shouldn't be so much afraid. We just got to do it. We live in the moment, live in the present, and we have like a direct line to God and to community and to knowledge and to everything. So we have everything we literally need in order to move on. That gives me hope.
Köszönöm, és akkor én meg is
Thank you
ragadnám
so much. And maybe I'll try to take these words, live as persons of hope. that is ancient, and from the perspective of God, how do we look on our actual world? Our world of nowadays is full of challenges. Almost 1 year that we live in that pandemic and all its consequences, which is not very difficult, not only very difficult on a human level, but also on economic levels. That is a crisis, but in every crisis is a possibility too. And I'd like to ask you, what can we learn individually, as a community, as humanity? What can we learn out of that pandemic? What does that pandemic teach us about dignity of man? This situation, so that this situation doesn't remain just a crisis, but maybe a possibility for a better deployment of humanity. I'd start with a very small contribution, and then others can develop that further. For me, it's very interesting when I go out on the street that everybody wears masks, and I think that is really great. That mask is what unites us in the whole humanity, on the whole world. Man looks like this. There's unity with that strange mask. That is just something very interesting. We see that in life of family, there's a lot of changes, and even more for families with small children, as they had to switch in that online world. And it is really a big challenge, and a lot of difficulties were in that for the families and for kids. But there's a lot of interesting new aspects in this too. They started to speak with each other. They started to take out games. They tried to come together more. There were a lot of difficulties and fights too, but they really found back to each other. And I think when life actually, because of a lot of work and things, we live in a very hectic way. Now something has become more slowed down, and maybe we were able to get closer to each other. And I think that is something very positive, what happened in that pandemic. Then I also see that a lot people started to occupy with things they didn't occupy with before. Like I already mentioned this morning, that I was listening to speeches that I wouldn't have listened to before because I just wouldn't have time for it. People are discovering things in their lives they hadn't the possibilities to before. And I think that is also something that is very positive. It's a positive experience in this pandemic. And the economics, I think, if I look back to the 50s, when I was a small child, today's children and families are very, very rich compared to that time. And still we were very happy. maybe we find back to what we used to call when a person happy inside, then with very few he can be happy. If he is not happy inside, then nothing is going to be enough to make him happy. So that's what I wanted to share. Maybe somebody else wants to continue.
Thank you.
If we could maybe step back two steps and can maybe also say generally that a lot of people realize that more than everything else, we need the other person. And here, I don't want to say that it's not God we need most, but maybe what could the society use as a teaching from this situation. I hope that many realize that the most important thing that we would like to realize again is that we could meet without any restrictions with other people, not travels or events or whatever, but a real meeting and relationship to the other person. We realize how much important is that other person, and I think in the future too, this is going to be very important, because we will really need
amiket könnyedén el kéne, hogy engedjünk,
what are things that we could easily renounce on, and what are the real necessities that we cannot renounce on. And another thing that I would like to mention, we were thinking about that a lot, and there's a contrast between the waves of last spring and of last autumn. We could really see very well what happens if politics starts to realize what is the real problem, and reacts on the essence. And what happens if this doesn't take place? What happens when those who know what is the virus and how does it spread and how we calculate these models, etc., when they talk together, what happens then? And if the central question, human life and the sickness, kind of get lost in there. When politics react, and they react inside of the framework. In the summer, we had a little bit of time, and there were other participants that could talk on, that started to talk on this pandemic, and objectively we're in a much worse situation, but we are handling the situation a lot more softly than we should. Now is coming the third wave with the British new mutation, and probably we should really shut down the country for 2-3 weeks. We would be able to do this, but it is really, we don't do it right now, and it's really a testimony that the politics tried out that if it listens to natural sciences in a natural science question, you would at the same time have to listen to the social questions, to equality, to the question of the poor, to the question of health system. The politics were able to try out to in which way they can find good solutions, in what way they can't.
Köszönöm. Nagyon köszönöm.
Thank you very much. I'd like to contribute to that. What I found between humans, that they just simply they can be really happy about the small things. That's very interesting. I live in a society when to allow something is only a matter of priorities. Whether I go on to do a vacation on Turkey, it's only a matter of whether I want it or not, because I can actually afford it to myself. Right now, I can't afford to do anything. And if I was already capable to go for a walk in the park, it's already what a big thing. So we rediscovering the little things in life. And what really got into crisis right now is the consume world, because until now the motto was work, buy, consume, and now we can't enjoy that kind of enjoyments in life, the cheap enjoyments in life. You can't go to wellness, you go to the restaurant, and people who used to live only for that sort of so they got into a crisis, because they think like, for what do I live now? Why should I work? Why should I earn money if I can't spend it? What's the purpose? What's the point? But people who have real values, who live for culture, who live for the family, who live for art, who live for science, who live for God, they can continue peacefully with their lives. Okay, they can't go to a concert, but no one took away culture from them. So they kind of rethink what has value in the system. They reevaluated what has value in their lives and what hasn't. So I'll be very curious, but unfortunately here in the parish, I'm unfortunately only in contact with people who are Christians, who they kind of have faith and they live with God. But how do people live through this crisis, who used to live primarily for the consume, for buying goods? How do they relate to it? How can they get through this? And then this is the challenge for me. How can we become resourceful in giving them some value? Because the value system, the world for these people has collapsed, and what can we give them to rebuild their world, but in a real value and something real? So there's a risk that we could just go back into the same where we used to be. Like in the summer we could experience that, and I'm truly looking forward to that. It hopefully won't return to its previous life. So for those who lost their values which they had, we should give them a new value, a real value. And what also showed itself, that it's not the poor who need me, actually. It's more like I need the poor, that I'm allowed to help someone. So it's not even the me who serves the poor, it's the poor who serves me. So actually we got to a situation where the kind of love-giving terms, charity, was not possible until now, because there was no real demand for it. Now, of course, there's always homeless people, there's always poor people, but in the big community, in the parish community, they're like a mother who brings 2 sacks full of clothes, and we're just getting more and more and more, and we can't give it to anyone because no one wants it, because everyone has, sort of. So it's not like that there's not enough people who are not willing to give, but it's actually even the ones who doesn't have are not willing to accept it. They're not willing to accept help. So it's not that there isn't any goodwill in the world of charity in the world, but we're not ready to accept it. So finally, I'm sorry for this term, but really finally we got into a situation where I need to, where I'm ready to raise my hands that yes, I actually do need something. That that although I'm financially well off, but I just can't leave my child for anyone because grandma can't take care of her. So now I can leave it to some student can take care of it. So there could be like a network of people who, because everyone has some needs, everyone has a, and if that happens, so demand and supply meet, that's where this network of love is really striving. So this where I can show to someone, even someone well off, I can show them that, look, I still need you, or you still need me. It's not because, see, you might, it's like I can help you financially, but on the other hand, you might help me with something else which I can do. So for me, that could be an interesting challenge.
Köszönöm. Esetleg a szükséges kínálatok találkozása mentén, Tibor.
Maybe Tibor, you can follow on that. Necessaries and answers, or or in any other way you can join this.
Actually, well, I could maybe summarize what has been said until now. So one thing is, because of the crisis, everyone had to ask themselves what is important. You had to think about that, and you had the possibility as well, because you were not in a position anymore where you're just turning around day after day. So we kind of listened about, we heard about consumism, some very. So I'm extremely sorry for the fashion boutiques, because I don't think that many people bought nice garments these days, because everyone was working from home. So, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what kind of tie you wear and what sort of dress you have. So how good it is that we don't have to travel around, we don't have to pay attention what we dress. So I used to spend so much time with hotels and with driving around and finding park place, and so actually we can communicate very well with each other now. So what is really important, like dresses and cars, are suddenly not so important anymore. Or the things we used to think as important, we no longer value them, like Father Joseph said. And the other part is
individualizmus, meg technológiailag is megsegítve, hogy igazából nekem nincs szükségem senkire. Hát megnyomok 2 gombot, jön a pizza, megnyomok másik.
So the thing is that finding out that actually I can perfectly the realization that I can live perfectly well on my own at home, that I can just call someone and the pizza comes, and I can do everything from here. And but then it turns out that even though I just managed to manage my life from home and live by myself and somehow cope with all the situation, but then it turns out that all that vaccine thing, that it's not like there's a remote part of the world called Africa where I don't really care about them, but that sort of the vaccination is for everyone, and the vaccine research is also common now. The whole problem is common, and so the one is so even the Brits who just fell out of Brexit, but at the same time they move on, and then so the very fact that we need each other, we can only do things together. That is an experience which we all made at an individual level, on a country level, and that experience. So if it just stays like that, and then we return to the old world, there's still many things changed because we have this experience. And I also think that, and I agree with what Father Joseph said, that in this situation we need to be able to give something. So we just so it's kind of discussions, the usual discussions, like in a enterprise word, like, oh, how bad it is, or how many people got how many contradicted the virus, and how many people get sick, etc. But if we step over of this and we talk about values, we talk about what the realizations you made, like Patrick used to say, from the good news, you usually put emphasis on the news rather than the good. But if we really give the good as the news, then and it could be a little thing. It could be like, oh, we managed how to teach our 3 children from home while we at the same time, while we don't have 3 rooms. Oh, how cool it is that we can have lunch with our family, or that father can eat with us because he used to work or used to eat with his colleagues. So if these little things, again, coming back from that spotlight, and the media, so if we can turn the eyes of others and the attention of others to these real values, then I think we already gave a lot.
Thank you. I think in the name of our sisters, I really can say that we are talking about very, very interesting topics and would like to stay here at least another hour. But I just heard somebody that it is the clock of somebody, and it is 8 o'clock, and we have to round up not only this roundtable talk, but our conference too. This conference actually started because the social sisters are preparing to the general meeting, which will be in the summer if it really takes place. And we were dreaming about this conference as a preparation to that in a very different form. It was a learning process for us to have it in this way, not only about the subject, but about the way we could hold it on a technical level. These are very important topics for us, the social teaching of the church, because we really live in the social mission of the church. Our rule is talking about that a lot. For us, it is really a very important topic, and I would like to ask at the end from our speakers, what do you want to what is your message for us as we advance for our general assembly? How could we answer to all these topics? What would be your last message for us?
Hát talán mondjuk, hogyha az én
oldalról
mondhatom.
I say it from my point very briefly, do not forget that human life and help poor of the world will not be possible if we do not defend human life on the world in general. We can talk about the dignity of the creation. We depend on all creation and created beings, and I'd really encourage you that if we do good to any little thing, I'd say little living being, then we do good to the poor of the world too.
Thank you very much.
I would say shortly, I have a favorite phrase, life wants to live. Family cannot die. The persons want to get married, they want to have a family, they want to have children. And maybe your families too, it would be really good if you could be with them, help them, and show them positive examples that they could see that it is good to live, and it's good to live in family. That's what I can say from the family perspective. You live in another location, but you do a lot, you work a lot for families, and they really need your help and your accompaniment. And as reflecting on this topic, the Emmaus disciples came into my mind as they are walking to Emmaus. They lost hope, and Jesus comes to meet them, and step by step shows them new hope, and their heart got burning. That's what I really wish all of you. Jesus is with us on our side, and always will get our hearts burning again and again.
Thank you, Zsuzsa. You don't even know how much you hit the nail, because protecting children and families is one of the important charisms of our community. I already spoke this afternoon about how I see that the world, the business world, and church and spirituality could fuse to converge and integrate. So what I ask for that you, as much as is possible, you should be partner in that you should support us lay people, you should support the business world, because there's also a need for that, but also a demand for that. So it's extremely important. And you see that even if it's not yet mainstream, but I'm not alone with this. There are many of us. There are lots of organizations and Christian businesses who work really hard for that on the one side, on the lay side, and you should work towards this on the church side, and then we'll meet. Thank you very much. To accompany the words of Zsuzsa, who spoke about burning heart, that I really wish that this kind of enthusiasm and this kind of wondering about for art, and so if we refine that beauty and dignity of human life which God gave us, and we learn to wonder about this, marvel at it, then this kind of internal happiness will take us even further, and it won't be just faith which we give, but it will be that good news really that we give. So we should not lose our wonder towards the art of God.
Thank you very much in the name of my sisters too for this encouraging words. Thanks again for everything you told us today, for your participation, and for the speeches in this conference. I thank all the participants. I thank the translators for their hard work, and I would ask our superior to close this conference. Pataki Ágnes.
Csatlakozom Magdinak a szavaihoz.
I confirm Magdi's words, I really thank everybody who in any way participated in that conference. Most of all, I thank God because the circumstances as they were, still he helped us that we could organize this conference in that way. And really, a lot of us got together. We are 94 right now. And the Zoom and in the YouTube, there's a lot of other people that are following and can look at it later too. I'm really grateful that this possibility could be realized. Thanks to God in the first place. Thanks to my council who had the idea for this conference. Thanks for all technical help. Without János and his colleagues, this wouldn't have been possible at all. Thanks to the sisters of this house that received us, and that chapel where we built up the studio and helped us on every level too. Thank you to the translators. I was translating earlier, and I know what that means when we have to translate technical text and in an incredible rapidity. Thank you to you all, and thanks to our speakers that really worked and prepared and in a very diversified way led us into a very deep insight to all these topics. I'm really thankful that all of this on the YouTube will stay and can serve in the future to others, sisters that maybe couldn't join us today. Thank you very much to all of you. And I would ask that what we were listening to, let's try not to shelve or just to forget, but let's try to really work with that, because that is a very important part of the preparation for our General Assembly. We will look back onto these topics, because really that is the big question in the situation of today's world, where in which direction cause our charism, cause the Lord for us to go on. First of all, on the regional level and then on the general level, please work on these topics that we were talking about. Let it be fruitful in our hearts, let it grow in our hearts, so that we can discuss and deepen these topics together later on. I'll close this conference with these words. And let's do this with a prayer. Glory to the Father, to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. I could still give a blessing. God be with you. The Lord be with you. Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Köszönjük szépen ezt az áldást.
Thank you very much for the blessing. Holy Father usually says, have a good meal, and I would say, have nice dreams. Thank you very much.
Mind örökké. És hát Kubában, meg ha még a Atlanti óceán túlpartján.
Cuba, and on the other side of the ocean, it's still only the afternoon, so have a nice day and God bless you. Bye-bye.